Okay, hi everyone. It's Ron McKinney with Deux Photo with our latest version of our webinars. Very happy to have here David Yoonha Park. He did some really fantastic shoot with the New York City Ballet for their Firebird performance. He did the promotional work for them. David, if you can just kind of take it from there and introduce yourself a little bit to everyone.
Sure. Thanks, Ron. Yeah, I'm Dave Yoonha Park. I'm a New York-based filmmaker. I've been doing kind of short form commercial content since about 2007. I was doing like a lot of music videos for the first few years, and then kind of segued into branded content like everybody else on earth. but I started doing work for New York City Ballet around 2010. My friend Ellen Barr, she produced a film. She's a former City Ballet dancer, and she produced a film called New York Export Opus Jazz. That was like a filmed version of the Jerome Robbins ballet. And then she also produced a film, Ballet 422, which is showcasing Justin Peck, resident choreographer, creating a ballet. And then that was more like a cinema verite documentary. But anyway, around 2010, she took over the directorship of the media department at New York City Ballet, which, up to that point had been, I think, more about archiving performances and kind of doing mini documentaries about the repertoire. But then around that time, they started commissioning like promos for new ballets, particularly like when Justin started doing his first commission pieces for New York City Ballet. We did the first promo, and it was like the first time we were shooting something off the stage, and like something a little bit more commercial and maybe more music video inspired. But like from that point on, we kind of just started getting more adventurous and doing kind of more stylized types of things. And then under Ellen, and then Rebecca Bjornsdotter, who kind of took over as director after her, who commissioned this one. We've been kind of in the habit of doing these sort of kind of like, fashion editorial inspired promo spots, like short promo videos. So that's kind of where this came about. And, these promos, they would be for new ballets as well as repertory pieces. And the challenge between those, the differences of trying to sell an existing ballet versus a new ballet was a challenge. And this is of course one of the famous pieces of NYCB rep.
Right.
Yeah.
You told me about how you walked down the hallway and saw the artwork there at New York City Ballet, and that kind of inspired you, and for this piece. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, basically they were bringing the Firebird out again, and they wanted to create a promo for it, and I think I had been seeing these there's like these massive photos all over the New York City Ballet offices of just old performances, going back 40, 50 years. And then but then there's like these giant photos by Henry Lutweiler that I think are in his book Ballet. But there's like these massive prints of his like kind of long exposure photographs, and like particularly there's a large one right next to the bathroom. So I'd pass by this constantly, and just and he had a bunch of photos of the Firebird performance as well. So let me see, I think I have some of these here. Yeah, here we go. Are you seeing this?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is right next to the bathroom. Like, I think this is about like 5 feet tall. And then there's these giant prints of Firebird performance. And so I think this is just kind of planted in my head. But as you can see, there's kind of some motion blurring happening. But so anyway, just I think just thinking about these costumes and everything, it just seemed like them being kind of blurry like that. Just that's how I remember seeing them. So that was kind of planted in there. But then there was like an open brief about just presenting this ballet somehow in a 30-second spot or a minute-long spot. And I think it was just, the challenge seemed to be, especially with these rep ballets, it's just like, you've got Balanchine, you've got Stravinsky, you've got these costumes and sets designed by Marc Chagall. It's just like, just let that do the work. Like, don't get in the way of that stuff. It's just a matter of how do you present this kind of in a new way, where all these things are kind of singing on their own. And so we just kind of came up with this concept. It sounds so simple when I say it, but
it does.
It's so complicated.
Yeah, it says you came up with this concept, and it's like like so far, I think everyone's seen the video, so they have a sense as to what the end result was.
Yeah,
but I don't think anybody has like an idea of like exactly how you put this together, and in that picture of the room, I think like showing a picture of the room that you did the shoot in, and showing what it started looking like, and then kind of describing how you built around it, would help.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think the big thing is that so much of the imagery is really iconic and memorable, and like it's been really well photographed in the past, and just kind of these iconic poses like really stuck out. And well, I think the idea of doing something with like bullet time photography was always like, oh, that'd be a really great thing. Like after when you start working on these ballet things, just like you think of what kind of tool could we use to like really shoot this in a different way. And like for years we're just thinking it would be great to have like that kind of bullet time, like frozen moment kind of rig set up, just because what better subject than like ballet dancer. So that was like in the back of my mind for years. And then but we were really inspired by like the Viewmaster toy, like the kind of stereoscopic slides that you play with as kids, but also just the fact that it's like they're still images, but they're still really engaging. And but also like the kind of storytelling limitation of just like it's just 7 panels on one of the slides. And so like growing up, you see Cinderella or something told over 7 images. And so like, how do you condense that story into just like 7 frames? So that challenge became kind of interesting. And like, it seemed like when we just would pick 7 frames from like the ballet, it would kind of add up and be like, oh, you can kind of feel the whole story here. So it seemed conducive to this story. And then, the technique though is really just, it's a combination of bullet time photography or time slice photography. There's a few names, but it's it's the trick from the Matrix that the Matrix made really popular, of just when it's kind of like a moment frozen in time, and this like a camera kind of like flying around in an impossible speed, basically. But I feel like most people are familiar with this, but it's the way that's achieved is just like a rig of 60 to like 150 or like however many still cameras arranged kind of like on an array, and they either fire like they fire in sync with each other, or like in sequence, and kind of like placed in different shapes. And then when edited together, it creates this sense of like this kind of impossible camera move, or like a camera moving at an impossible speed.
Right.
So it's
why don't we do this? Why don't we do this, Dave? Why don't we go ahead and show the video, because there may be some people on here who haven't seen the video. So why don't we show that to them?
Great.
Do you have it ready to go, or I have it?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see.
So this is the end result, everyone.
Okay. Should we watch it again?
That's just, it just amazes me every time I look at it. Great. I kind of feel like every time you see it, you kind of like see something new that you haven't even really noticed before.
We'll go like shot by shot later. There's like, watching it back recently, it's just like we employ so many different types of tricks for each shot, really. But yeah, I mean, so that's essentially bullet time photography. You know, we worked with a vendor called Scheimflug based out of New York, and they specialize in designing and operating this rig. And so I don't think, you know, there was a period in the late 90s after The Matrix came out that was showing up in every movie.
Right.
They don't really use it for, I think they use it more for like kind of fashion photography and like, you know, nowadays like animated GIFs and just sort of kind of like little pieces of web content. But like, but yeah, we approached them with this need and we kind of, and they sort of talked through the different products they had, which is like different variations of this basic rig. And so we kind of brought our needs, like our storytelling needs, as well as like our budget. And then we kind of hashed it back and forth till we found the correct setup for us.
Cool.
But yeah, I think it ranges. I think the most common setup they get is 60 cameras, 60 still cameras, and that covers roughly.
Which is what you used.
Yeah, I think we ended up using 30 actually. But like they do 60 cameras in a roughly 120-degree arc. And you know, when played back at 24 frames per second, that's roughly, you know, 2.5 seconds.
Right.
But we made some variations to that to spend less money and yeah, just kind of cut on setup time.
I think part of what was so impressive about what you did was the amount of work that you put into in preparing for the shoot itself, you know, including the modeling work that you did. You know, you could pull up those pictures. In fact, this might be a good time to show the room and then pull up those pictures. Sure. And
right.
Just kind of talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the big challenge was just trying to, because this rig is quite a large footprint. So we need a space big enough to operate that. And then I'm sure as many of your users are aware, just shooting dancers is just a matter of having the right flooring, you know, especially if we're doing like a long shoot day. And so in the past, we've either shot in a soundstage and had to bring in a sprung floor, which is, you know, quite an expense, or we've done a lot at the kind of NYCB rehearsal rooms, which is where we ended up shooting this. So I'll show you a photo of like what the room looked like. Let's see. So this is, I think this is the exact room we shot in the Rose Building at Lincoln Center. You can see the sprung floor and like all the reference marks.
Yep.
Running along, but and the ceilings are quite high. I think those are like 12-foot, 11-foot ceilings, but still it's just not quite soundstage height. And we couldn't build like, you know, there's no lighting rig or anything like that.
Yep.
So it's still shooting in a non-film studio. Okay. But then, so let me see. I think the rig we ended up using was a 30 camera rig. And I think it was roughly 90-degree, like a 90-degree sweep.
Yep.
And that was the big reason we went for that is just the setup time was shorter. The problem was, I think they usually kind of, it takes at least 2 days to operate this thing. It takes 1 day for setup and calibration, and then like usually the second day for shooting. And then like, but we could really only afford 1 day. So we had to devise something that we could set up in the least amount of time and then still leave most of the day for shooting. We were also up against just like dancer schedules, and they all had rehearsals and performances to get to. So we're just trying to slot everybody into this tight schedule.
Yep.
And then I feel like I'm talking about the most boring aspects of this. Like what was the original question?
I'm just wanting. Well, the other thing I wanted you to show them was the pictures of the modeling that you put.
Oh yeah, right.
Modeling that just to kind of help prep for the shoot.
Right. So let's see. I think there's one illustration that would probably really help.
Like the amount of work that you guys put into just in preparation, which was necessary because, you know, this gig is, you know, the equipment that you're using is very expensive. You only have a little bit of time. You had like an hour with each of the dancers.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Are you seeing the sketch that I just put up?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So this was kind of like uh, something I probably drew and was like sharing with the DP, which is just like uh, so there's like at least three main variables that determine like the look and feel of how the sweep moves with the setup. And the main ones are focal length of the lens, what's the nodal point distance, which is basically the distance from the camera to the subject, the interocular distance, which is the distance between cameras, and then the shape of the camera path itself. So if you alter any of these variables, it just in subtle and not subtle ways really affects the overall feel of just the camera movement, or like the virtual camera movement. And then so because of that, and because to adjust any of these factors in person takes about an hour and a half at least, that's just time we didn't have on set. So we tried to make as many of these creative decisions in advance as possible. And that ended up determining the number of cameras we had, the overall shape, and then, but also because we were putting it into the space, we had to figure out how much the backdrop we needed to cover up the room, and as well as just like how much of the ceiling we're going to see. And also just establishing camera height, because this rig doesn't really tilt. It's like if you want to reframe, if you just want to reframe with the camera, you can just, it's so, even on a tripod, it's very simple, but just like this whole rig, it essentially didn't tilt. It was basically held up on a dolly or on a couple like, a couple C stands, I think. But like even to adjust the camera height would take like 40 minutes. So just, we had to kind of decide our exact camera height before we shot anything. So for all those reasons, we took this to like a previs artist who modeled the space in 3D and then was able to show us, 1 second. Let me see if I can. Okay, I got these previous videos. Okay, so here's one previous video. Is that coming through?
Yes.
So yeah, this one is labeled 12 feet 90. So I guess what this is like the subjects in red are placed at the center point, the nodal point that all of the cameras kind of converge on. And so that's set to 12 feet. And then the sweep of view is like 90 degrees. And then because this is 1 second, I think this is modeling what like, 60 cameras would look like essentially. Each frame representing one camera placement. And then, okay, so I think this is basically where we landed. Let's see if I can find another video. So yeah, this is 12 feet at 90. This is 12 feet at 60 degrees. So you can see like a slightly less movement. But then in the background, you can also see where the ceiling is and kind of like the edges of the walls are. So this is all very helpful information to our art department, as well as just like lighting and everything else, and just kind of pre-planning the blocking.
When you do a shoot like this, you need to set up the room. Does New York City Ballet like help you? Like, do they have staff that help you set it up and all that, or is it pretty much all on your hands?
There was the New York City Ballet staff consists of the media director and a producer, and then but it's usually all just outside companies kind of coming in to do some stuff. If you ever shoot on stage, well, I can't remember if it's Rose, but you generally have to use the union stagehands for anything that involves like the David H. Koch stage. But because we were in the rehearsal space, it didn't involve that. We'll use the NYCB costumers, if we're using the costumes from the shows, as well as like the makeup artists, because it makes the most sense in recreating those looks. But like the lighting staff was all people we brought in.
Yeah, but I'm talking about like setting up the background, because you had to put up curtains or something.
Yeah. That was our people also. Yeah.
That was your people, yeah.
Let's see. Okay, one last thing to say about these previous videos. 1 second. Okay, so let's see. This previs video is, okay, so this is what 120 degrees looks like. That's like, you know, almost a full half circle. And then we just decided that was more than we needed. And, but like I said, we ended up doing 30 cameras. And so we asked for 30 cameras at 90 degrees. So it's like they could do 60 cameras at 90 degrees, but we asked for just half that many. One, because it was faster to set up, and two, because like the kind of jump and movement created like a slightly staccato feel to the move. That was kind of nice. Like it almost felt too smooth with 60 cameras for that sweep. So it's almost like the equivalent of just like, you know, in still like in animation, there's a concept of animating on twos, which is like animating for every other frame rather than for every, you know, 24 frames per second. And it creates like a slightly kind of chunkier movement. And that sort of worked for us. They also offered the option of interpolating frames to kind of create frames in between, but then it kind of lost some charm. It felt too smooth, which was
okay.
We wanted to handmade still.
Yeah. So we have like our first questions popping up now, and the first one I'm going to ask is because you've kind of touched on it a little bit, and that is it's from J.L. Williams, and he's asking about how did you and the team decide which scenes you wanted to epitomize in the Firebird, you know, and then how you wanted each setup to look, you know, for those scenes.
Yeah, that was definitely a decision that the NYCB media department was weighing in on, just like, you know, the script essentially. So we kind of went through and like I just pulled. They had an archival tape of the performance of the ballet with the principles we were using. So which was great. So I could see like the casting itself, and then like but this is, you know, like a pretty wide camera at the back of the theater, but you could still see the movements and like the basic moments. And so I'd go kind of screenshot those moments, and then we just kind of put together some loose storyboards. And then it was easy for people to just kind of weigh in. And it really just had to do with like, what are the kind of iconic key moments and just what's going to look best. And so I guess we decided on like the meeting of the Firebird with the Prince, and then like the big kind of group formations at the end was something we all knew we wanted, kind of like the reason to do this, you know, just like shoot it like that. But I think we're approaching it kind of like trying to tell like a storybook version of like a children's, like a golden book version of the story. It's just like, well, if you had to sum it up, like the Viewmaster thing, if you can sum it up in 7 images, like, which is it going to be? And they kind of figure themselves out pretty quick. Yeah. Cool. When you figure out like your must-haves, it's
right.
Pretty much sets it up.
Okay. You know, and eventually we're going to get into this right here, but another question has popped up from Tim Park is he's interested in hearing how you achieve the blurs and the sharp imagery at the same time, which I think you're going to go over with how the cameras were set and all that.
Right. So the main technical, the main technique being executed is a combination of bullet time with like long, I don't know the correct term for it, but just long exposure photography, you know, just you know, embracing motion blur basically, but like under a very controlled setting. And you know, sometimes it involved just ambient light, but then it also, so like our lighting on set was a mixture of two things. It was like very low colored ambient light, you know. I think we were using like the new Airflex like dimmable colored LED Fresnel lights. And it was a combination of that with more traditional still photography strobes, you know. And so I think the strobe would fire, and then I think, you know, we would keep, oh man, our shutter speeds were something like half second, I think. They weren't crazy long. We did a lot of tests with like much longer exposure times, but I think it was pretty fast in the end. It was still like maybe only a half second. But strobe would fire, the cameras would stay open, and then like the kind of motion trails would be formed from the ambient light. And so this would probably be helpful to just walk through the video to illustrate it.
And so while you're doing that, the motion blur would only come up when the dancers are actually moving in the shot, right?
Exactly. Okay, so are you guys seeing this the video right now?
Right, yes.
So I think for this one, yeah, so she did this maneuver that ended in this pose. Okay. So we would the John Engstrom, the technician from Flug, would be kind of operating the shutter release. And so he would have one for the flash and then have one for like the shutter release. So I think in this case, he's like a open, you know, he's like, you could hear all the cameras open in sync, and then Tess would do her maneuver. And then once she got to this position, he would trigger the flash. So what you're seeing is just like her movement preceding this pose right here.
Right.
And so that was for this one. I think for another one, it's like every shot was like slightly different. This one, okay, so this, like the key, like, let's see, the blue light on the prints here was the strobe, and we put a blue gel on it. And then there must have been kind of a reddish ambient fill from these like colored LEDs, which is what you're seeing kind of trailing off of him and off of her.
Yeah.
So,
and now he's locked in place, and that's why you see him so well while she is dancing during this half-second exposure, correct?
Exactly. Let's see. I think, how do we do this? Because like, I think he just kind of stayed in place, but he was pretty much in darkness, you know, like I think the fill on her, you know, we may have even shot this in 2 parts and like comped it or something, but like, but essentially it's just like, he's in quite a bit of negative fill, and then just like this kind of warm top light is on her. But as you can see, she's not being hit with any flash. Like we just flash him, and then she comes in and does this bit, and then it kind of fills in like this.
Yep. And Larry's video froze. Larry, yeah, there it is. JL's explaining it too. But he had a technician who was setting off the cameras with a half-second exposure and ambient lights. And then when they hit their pose at the end of it, the person was firing the strobes manually.
Yeah, and the great thing is like, I think everybody's instinct was to like freeze, but it's just like, no, you just keep moving and we'll shoot around you. And that's like kind of what I think gives it this extra energy. Like people were rarely kind of like stopping and posing. They're all kind of like mid, they're just going full out in their motion.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I think that's what makes it so fascinating, you know, like the combination of the movement of the dancers as well as the movement of like the cameras, if you will. You know, the cameras aren't moving, of course, but just the movement of the shots.
Yeah, and like I think in anticipation of this, we thought the exposure times would be like, you know, a few seconds long or something, but it was still very short. And like that was something we also tested extensively before we got on set, just because, you know, I think if you're out shooting nightlife photography or something, and you kind of want to get some light streaks, it's really easy to just make some adjustments. But like I said, just making any kind of change takes 20 to 40 minutes. It's just, we had to dial all this stuff in beforehand.
When you say you dialed it in and you tested it,
yeah.
Are you talking about the day of the shoot when you had all the cameras so you could see how it worked, or were you able to actually test this somehow like beforehand?
Yeah. So I'll show you I have this other document I'm going to show you. We made this, me and the DP made some just like lighting exposure, like a light trail test, basically. We did a lot of tests on this. We just studied and studied for about a month and just kind of taught ourselves how to do this. And then the minute the shoot was over, we just forgot everything. So like I was telling you, I've been having to study the last few days to remember.
Well, this was almost 3 years ago.
Yeah. But like, it was so funny, just like all of our collaborators, like the producers and dancers and the choreographers and everything, just like nobody, the DP and I were the only ones who had it all in our heads, and just like it was too complicated to explain to everybody from beginning to end. So we just have to trust that you know what you're doing. And But yeah, that was insane. Let's see.
Yep.
Okay.
And Bob Conley had a question: how is the blue in the background created? And you did that with the ambient lighting.
Yeah. So let me show you these tests that we did. You can kind of it kind of breaks down into each element. So we shot. We did a bunch of tests with different lighting setups. So this is like a combination of strobe and ambient, which was like the exact tool set we were just looking at for the those first 3 images.
And was this a day? Was this a day of, or was this beforehand?
No, this is a few weeks before.
Yeah.
And so you can see all the settings here. I can't remember what all these variations are. So let's see. Yeah, we have the, I guess different shutter speeds here. And like, here you can see no blurring. And then you start to see blurring in this 1/13 image, and then kind of more as you go. Is this tracking?
Yep.
And then, by about like 1 second, it's just kind of too much, or like it was more than we wanted. I think our sweet spot was probably around half a second, which you can see here.
Yep.
And then, and then we went all the way to like 6 seconds. It just got too messy. And then like, because we knew that there was gonna be like a sword prop, we tried attaching like an LED. I think this is just my iPhone light here, but just to see like these like really sharp trails, so we were testing for that too. I think the ambient light in this case is just the modeling light on the strobe. So that's probably what that is. But yeah, you can kind of see, up top at 150th, there's like no noticeable ambient blur, and then just kind of gets more and more. But yeah, we were surprised that it was a lot less than we expected to be. We thought this exposures were going to be like 4 seconds long, but I don't think we ever went past a half second, especially when they're moving so fast. It's just like it trails really quickly.
Yep.
Okay, and then so again, we did 10 seconds, like way too much. But then you get these like really cool iPhone light trails. Then we did ambient only tests, which you can see here. This is great. It becomes really, really abstract. Yeah, and then holding poses, just try to test out every variation. And then we did multi-strobe with ambient as well. Let's see. So in this, you really get these like clear slices of like a clear image,
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, like a before and after, and the action in between,
Exactly, yeah. So the method for this is like flash, this kind of movement, and then like first position, second position, basically, And I don't think we really did any of this just because I think the storytelling got too complicated, because you start having to basically edit mid-frame kind of thing. I think it just got too complicated. So we didn't really do this. And then, yeah. Okay, so this is just multi-strobe only without like ambient fill. And you just get these really kind of sharp things. I think, there's been a lot of, I think photography's been, dance has been photographed like this in the past. And like, that's like a clear reference that we were just trying to do something a little different, like a little bit more impressionistic. But so we tried out all these variations and then kind of found which settings worked for us. So we didn't have to like, try all this stuff out the day of. We kind of knew, well, we definitely don't want this somewhere in this range. And we still, made adjustments here and there, but we knew roughly what our toolkit was going to be at the outset. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And we'd have another question from Mark Schermeister. He's asking about, do you account for the difference in color temperature between the modeling lights? I think he means like the LED lights that you're using for ambient and the flash.
Yeah. Very much so. Yeah, that was very much designed for that. I think the trickiest part was, I think the other reason we had to stick with like lower shutter speeds was that the color just got very hot really fast, the ambient fill. And like, you can only get it so dim before it, like if you're doing, photographers will know what I'm talking about. It's just like, even if the ambient field is very low, if you're doing like a multi-second exposure, it's going to blow out, or the color is going to become uncontrollable.
Yeah.
So that was the reason we found that shutter speed sweet spot.
So talk about now what it was like to work with the dancers and like getting this set up and helping them understand what you were doing. I mean, I presume they were like seeing it as you were shooting it or whatever, but
yeah, that was the simplest way to explain. It's just like I'm not going to try to explain how this works, but like once we shot it, we had an on-screen, like a on-set monitor where they quickly comped the shots together, and so you could see the loop like immediately. And so everybody got very excited about that, just like, the dancers would immediately want to come look at the monitor because it looks so cool. But just like the cool thing is we could get a bunch off, and then like and then just kind of review and mark the favorites.
Yeah. And how difficult was it for your technician to get the light to flash at the right moment? Because like there's I mean, especially in New York City Ballet, it has to be pretty perfect.
Our technician was very good. He was the most experienced, like operating that rig, and we had the same concern. It's just like, you're gonna know when to get like at the right point. Is like, I know, and he was like on the money every time.
That's great. Good.
Yeah. I don't think we answered the previous person's questions about like the color fill, or did we?
Well, I don't know that we did. You mentioned it earlier, but that was a question from Bob Connolly, and he was just saying, how is the blue in the background created?
Yeah, so it's probably just easier to look at the image itself. So I think the light that we're seeing here, this is not a great example. Okay, with this, there's the blue light on the prints, which is, our key is essentially like a photo strobe on a boom arm that we could kind of put anywhere we wanted. And we were just gelling it. It wasn't like we weren't dialing in colors or anything. And then the kind of top, like the reddish top fill on them, I think these were the airy like LED Fresnels that were hanging above. I'm sure they were like putting some sort of softbox. Yeah, I think there was like an LED softbox above everything. And then this like strobe on an arm that we would kind of move around. And then you also see like there's like a curtain backdrop encircling the back, and then there's like just background lights on them too, and those are just kind of this bluish color.
And this was just a single strobe, is that correct?
You mean the key on him?
Yeah,
that was just a single strobe.
Yep.
Everything else is just continuous ambient fill. Yeah. And then let's see, what's another example? Okay, so this is a really cool example of this moment right here. That's actually all the cameras. Everything else we've seen so far is the cameras firing simultaneously. They have a option where you can have them kind of fire in sequence. So it's just like you do capture some movement as well, You seen that?
Okay. Yeah.
But they're also they're firing in sequence, but they're all like long exposure photographs too. So the technician was explaining to me how this would look, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. And he's like, "Let me just show you." And then so we just shot this, and that's kind of a variation here.
So when you say you shot that in sequence, that means that you have a bunch of half-second exposures going along, like it's firing for half seconds.
Yeah. It's like as opposed to all at once and then all off at the same time.
Right. It was most of it like shooting all at once, and then like that one you did the moving around.
Exactly. We only did a few of these just because like we're mostly interested in kind of just capturing these still moments. And also you'll notice that it's like there's no strobe in this one. This just had to be continuous light.
Right.
We tried one with the strobe. It just looks odd because it's just there's one strobe frame in the beginning.
Right.
And the rest are kind of in this dim light, which kind of gives up the trick also.
Yeah.
And these are
so
blue key and blue fill. Yeah.
So like what f-stop are you at? Because it looks like there's, you know, like you got a pretty good depth of field there.
Yeah, let's see. I think I can't remember if I
I'm presuming you must have been like at a f11 or something like that to get that.
I have no idea.
I know it's a long time ago.
Yeah, I just the one thing that's interesting about this is kind of the common thing with this and stereoscopy, you know. The main difference between this setup and like traditional like, you know, 3D photography is that you're trying to with stereoscope, you're just trying to recreate like the human head as much as possible.
Uh-huh.
And the main limitation there is like, that's to say like you want, if you're shooting 35, you want 50 millimeter lenses, just the most normal lenses you can get. And have the center points of the lenses as close to the human interocular distance, which is roughly like the width of your eye, which is approximately 50 millimeters. So 50 and 50. And then, is that correct? Yeah, that sounds about right. I can't remember what I was saying. It was something about stereoscope. Oh yeah. So basically you want the lenses to be like, you don't want them to be longer than the human eye generally is. You want them to be normal or wider, you know? But like, oh God, it's this interesting phenomenon. It's like, if you're shooting with normal lenses and then you shoot them like the interocular distance is like wider than a human vision,
Right.
it has the effect of making the subject look like a miniature, you know. It's like essentially if it's like a giant looking at this thing. So you're trying to keep the cameras as close together or as close to matching human vision as possible. And then if you do wider lenses, you have to compensate the other way or else things start looking enormous. So
I remember you were saying you were doing trigonometry, you know,
yeah.
they're going, yeah, I'd be out of it right there.
Yeah. Like, oh God. Yeah, it was just like, I was able to hold this in my head for a few weeks, but it's funny talking about this stuff again.
Yeah, and what another thing that was really interesting to me is, you know, as a photographer, you know, I was a videographer before as a photographer, and I still do, you know, some video work. It's, you know, really enjoy that part of it.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I look at your, you know, the way this is shot, you know, and Larry Sachs asked a question about, you know, how were these delivered? Was it a video? Was it individual images? And this was part of a 30-second promo, and then he also cut it down to a couple of 15-second promos for the New York City to use to promote their Firebird performance. And but as a photographer, there's moments in here that you're saying, oh wow, I could just pull this slice right here, and what an amazing image that would be. So to me, it's like, I know that you were, you know, just focused on delivering the product of the video,
Yeah.
but at the same time, this would be an amazing like photo shoot as well.
Yeah, you know, my ideal deliverable would have been like some sort of interactive video installation, because I think like the most pleasure I get out of it is like just scrubbing it, you know.
Uh-huh.
You can kind of just like feel like you're just like moving around the space yourself. Like I think just, you know, if this was just like a motion piece and it was just like a series of moving dolly shots, I think that's like kind of visually uninteresting, like conceptually uninteresting, but like I think it's cool because it's these frozen moments. But the thing that's most satisfying is just like, you know, scrubbing the timeline yourself and just like seeing it move back and forth. And I wish I'd still like to set up something like that for this, you know.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think the stills all hold. I mean, it's just, it turns out that video is nothing but a bunch of stills put together, you know.
Right, exactly. So did it become more complicated when you had the entire group there, or was it pretty much the same?
The shoot felt like a photo shoot, you know. It felt like a studio shoot, in the sense that just like, you know, you're just going after these moments, but the dancers were just, we had a ballet master on set who was kind of walking through the choreography with everybody and like running it. And I think people didn't even realize they were being shot. I mean, other than it flashing, it's not like it's not the same as like shooting like video takes or something. Yeah, it would just like be these kind of like bursts of activity.
Can,
And
can you pull the group? Can you pull the video back up and go to the
sure.
group shot, please?
Yeah.
I want to look at.
So yeah, I think this is just a punch in on something. Oh, this is a good place to say like the so the still resolution is like I think it was like 6,000 by 4,000. So in video terms, it's an approximately 6K video image we're working with, which just meant that we could because of the lensing and the f-stop, we could punch in, you know, without too much loss of detail.
Right, now stop right there for a moment.
Yep.
And I'm just looking at this because I was thinking to myself, man, if you're just using one strobe, there has to be like shadows of one onto the other, but it's really, I'm not really seeing that. Like, you know how sometimes the shadows can be very distracting, you know, if one person is in front of another person and you see their shadow on that person. But you know, while there may be some shadows here, it's like it's so moody and you know, like the ambient light that you're using and that you created for this just works so well to like create this amazing mood.
Yeah, I think like if you're, you know, trying to do like a straight portrait, I think we're doing a lot of things wrong. But because the costumes are so weird, the setting is so weird, it was just like just to push it weird enough that we can get away with this stuff. And like I think that's where like the Marc Chagall imagery really kind of came in handy as like a good reference, because we looked at some of his, you know, so he designed the costumes as well as the backdrops for the ballet. And then so we looked at some of his paintings for any additional inspiration. Let me see if I have some of those. Okay. So yeah, this is just like a few paintings we're looking at. And we weren't really, I think if we had some more production design budget, we would have liked to have kind of etched some of these forms or painted some of these forms on the backdrop, but we just didn't really have the time or money for that. But like, you know, it was more just like the ways the blues kind of meld into the blue greens and just like those types of color washes and kind of overlays. It's like, okay, like if that happens, we're okay with that, you know. It's like that's sometimes the thing you're trying to fight on some of these like shoots, but this kind of gave us permission to make some of these happy accidents happen. And like I think I would have liked to push it further in this direction, but this is more just like creative license.
Yeah, you know, you can still get a sense of it very much so, you know.
Yeah.
Like when you see these images here, you can get a sense of how we understand how that was part of, you know, how you were inspired.
Yeah, actually, this is most helpful in. I remember the lighting designer in the day. One thing that we kind of had to just like make up, just like what does the lighting on the backdrop look like, you know? And it was hard to translate this to the lighting designer because he was just like, it was so dim and just like, we'll just know that it's going to really pop when on these long exposures.
Right.
So once I showed him this kind of stuff, he's like, oh, okay, and then just kind of abstractly arranged his lights and stuff. But yeah, that was probably the most helpful place where these came into play. But yeah, as you can see, go back to the video for a second.
But you know, I'm not really saying anything about the comments, but you're getting so many comments over here about how wonderful this looks and how impressed and stunning. You know, they're just really very impressed with what you've come up with here.
Terrific. But you can kind of see, okay, so like are you seeing my arrow by any chance?
Yes.
Okay, so between here and here, this blue is like, this is the backdrop lighting.
Right, exactly.
It's separate, but like the way it kind of melts together, it just seems kind of like a ghostly vapor, you know? And like,
is this set from overhead? So that way, you know, like,
yes. So the backdrop lighting is just, it's like lights overhanging like the set that are just kind of pointed right down, like inward, you know? Yep. But the way it all kind of bleeds together, and then it has form as well, just like it was doing all these things that you just can't really predict. So this was as much planning as we did. Like this is where we kind of tweaked and like modified. It's just like, oh, wow, look at what that's doing. We should do more of that, you know? So we prepared enough beforehand that we could make these kinds of improvisatory adjustments to lighting. But they're just, oh man, I just wish we had so much more time. There are just so many more things I wish we could have done. And
yeah.
But
how long like did it take you, you know, to create that you know, each like setting it all up, you know, with the dancers, you know, change did you have like the same lighting, like the lighting setup was the same for each of them? And I mean, you may have changed it, of
yeah,
course, but
that's yeah. If that hasn't been clear, it's like that was like the major restriction they were dealing with, which is like it's like we can like to get this camera set up one way takes about 6 hours. You know, it's like if you want to change the orientation or even raise it or lower it, that's like another hour and a half. So we basically just committed to this one staging.
yeah, I understand that. What I'm talking about is, you know, okay, so did like the lighting, you know, the background lighting, the ambient lighting was up high. You know, I don't know if it was connected to the ceiling or what was used there, but was it pretty simple to just be able to switch from, you know, like when you brought in this entire group, you know, like how long did it take for everything to get set up before you were ready to shoot, like positioning them, you know, getting them all blocked and being sure that, you know, the way this was going to work? I'm just kind of curious, like how long it took to before you're ready.
Blocking was relatively simple because we had a ballet master with us, and you know, just knew the choreography inside and out and could just kind of ask for very specific cues. And you know, because we'd chosen our moments before, like the dancers knew what they're going to be expected to do. The most tweaking was just like, you need to start about 3 feet closer and end right on the target, because everything's centered around this like nodal point. We always knew what the main mark was. And so like all these compositions are basically just built around this center point. And I think for the most part, this moment is as it is in the ballet, is really just kind of, you know, centered around this one center post.
Yeah.
And we may have brought people in a little bit closer and kind of like have them pose more than they normally would in the ballet. But as you can see by their motion, like they're doing the choreo in this moment.
Yeah. And, you know, I guess it's, you know, Bob Connolly just makes this comment. It looks like a hazer is used, but, you know, it's really like the motion blur, you know, coming into effect like that. And
we talked about like, me and the DP were like, do we need like a smoke machine? It's just like, and the like, no, you're thinking 2-dimensionally. It's just like or 3-dimensionally. It's just, that's going to create too many problems, you know? And so just like there's all this atmosphere just provide natural. Yeah, like when we brought this to the colorist for finishing, we'd sent them the reference video, like this video you're seeing here, and then like just all the individual stills and clips. And they were just so confused. They're like, I think you forgot to send all the VFX files and like other layers, and just like, no, it's all in camera. And they're just like, what? They couldn't believe it. That was such a compliment to hear that from the color house.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But yeah, I mean, luckily the blocking was probably the easiest part. Everybody's doing the thing they've done like 100 times before.
Right.
We'd really just kind of like tighten people up a little bit. Or if there's like, okay, so with this here, you're seeing like there's like an LED attached to the tip of a sword here, and you're seeing that.
Yeah.
It's just so cool that these like light trails have like formed them, you know? So, I mean, we did a couple variations on this one just to create like different lengths of trail. Right. But for the most part, it was like within a couple brackets up and down from our initial sweet spot of like a half second.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this was fascinating.
Oh yeah, here's another one of these kind of in sequence moments. Yeah.
I'm sorry, show me that one again, please.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And now that one there, is that the one where they were doing the it wasn't all at the same time, but it was
yeah. Exactly.
Yep. All right. Well, Dave, I think that was pretty incredible. I do have JL's just asking, like how did they use it? Did they put it on TV spots, or was it just for social media? You know, what way did they use that?
It was just social media. I don't know if there was like a TV campaign, but it came out of rep again, and they put it up again, which is fun. And it's just like I think they'll use it as long as like the cast that's in this is still in the company.
Let's go ahead and play it one more time. Deb Hickey asked for us to play it from the start.
Yeah, of course, with the music.
Let it all go one more time.
All right.
Oh, that's just fascinating. Yeah, we you know, obviously a lot of photographers, you know, many of us are very creative. We're trying to think of like new ways of doing things, and you know, you just look at something like this and you can get inspired to come up with so many different variations of ways that you can do something like this. You know, I mean, obviously many of us don't have access to 30 cameras, but just the idea of what you did with the, you know, half-second exposures and the motion blur, and just absolutely fascinating. Yeah. Larry Sack says, I don't think I'll ever get tired of watching this.
Fantastic. I love it. I mean, like, I think I talked to you about it before, but just like, it's really tough to like conceptualize like how it works before you do it. And just, it was the sort of thing that at the last setup of the day, it was like, oh, I understand how this works now, and where to put where, like, you know, how to do this, and just like so frustrating. But I'm dying to bring this rig out for something else now, just now that we know how to use the tool properly.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think something I should say, like they have a rig that's as small as like 6 cameras, you know, that's like much more affordable, you know, and like and there's also like I know there's like still cameras out on the market that have like, you know, 3 lenses built in that you can kind of do these like mini movements and that sort of thing. So there's like the tools are out there, but it was just real fun to work with like the people who like operate the stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. That was really special for us to see. It's completely different from what we're used to seeing. And
okay.
That kind of opens our eyes to new things. Any final comments from you, Dave?
I mean, is it possible for you to keep answering questions offline or something like that? Or
how would you like people to contact you in some way, or what? What do you mean?
I'm not sure. I'm just like, if there's still questions on the chat that have gone.
No, we've got all the questions. Everybody right now is just saying thank you and just
great.
Talking about how astounding it is.
Sure. Yeah. It's just yeah, I'm gonna immediately forget all the stuff now.
But that's just it. Like, so, you know, I want to say who said this. Dan Browning. You know, he said it's fantastic, so creative, so complicated, and what an achievement. And that's just it. It was so complicated. Just like when you know, it's sort of like this is, you know, especially when you did this 3 years ago, it's just so out there. You know.
Yeah. Well, I hope it doesn't feel complicated. It should just feel kind of dreamy.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's like it's only yes. So it's complicated in the doing of it, but hopefully it just doesn't feel that way in the end.
Exactly. It doesn't feel that way one bit. That's what we're talking about. But the whole idea of once you have to bring out trigonometry in a shoot, it's complicated. All right, Dave. Well, thank you very much. It was great talking to you. We look forward to hearing from you in the future and whatever else you do with dance.
Absolutely. Likewise. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Okay. Bye-bye.